Well, welcome everybody. I'm Doug Fritz. I'm the co-founder and executive chairman at F2 Strategy, and I'm joined by Steve Lockshin today. This conversation really originated out of some conversations that we've been having with our clients and with Vanilla around one of the, I would argue, least noticed opportunities for growth that any wealth management firm can have, especially those that are handling just complex wealth creator clients around how to grow, and it's off of the data and the relationships exposed through the estate planning process. And so, in conversations with Steve and his team, what we've come to realize is that this is a tremendous opportunity for anybody that's just engaging in advisory relationships with their clients to take what information has been collected and actually deploy that into the relationship over 10, 20, 30 years and grow significantly through that. So I'm just stoked to have Steve join us today. So Steve, thank you for joining the session. And it's a quick kind of background, like your background. I mean, I know you tremendously. You're the hardest working, smartest, like investor, builder of firms in our industry that there's not even a second place behind you that I'm aware of. But maybe just kind of give me a sense of like your background and kind of we'll lead into kind of how you thought to even build Vanilla.
Well, Vanilla was built like any other solution, I guess, out of necessity. I built it for myself and showed it to a couple of my friends in the industry, and they said, I want it. And then next thing you know, we're talking to a VC, and all of a sudden we have a business. But the 30-second background is I've been in the industry for, I don't know, going on 35 years. Started out with, was a family office. I didn't know it was a family office. It's just helping out a client of mine. And ultimately built an RIA and sold that and kind of rebuilt it and sold that. And along the way, have always been curious about technology and how it can create efficiencies in the business and just playing around with it. And so have built a couple tech companies that are all fintech oriented and then invested in a bunch of fintech companies. So I'm just eternally dissatisfied and restless.
It's good. I have a friend whose business is like always happy, never satisfied. That seems very much on brand.
It's like being married.
That's right. Just you don't have to be satisfied. You can always get a little bit. Right? So that's awesome. And then just like randomly, like most people that start in the investment space running advisory firms don't instantly see the opportunity to translate that expertise into building software. Just for my personal benefit, like how did you have the guts to say, screw it, I could be as good as any of these other software firms. Like, let's go build this thing. Like, just give me a sense of like how that
happened. It probably started way back when. So my mentor, who's one of the top guys at Morgan Stanley now, his son came to work for me right out of college. And this was back when Advent, we were using TPP. So for those people who don't know TPP, that was the DOS-based version of what is today's software, Black Diamond, if you will. And we started building our own software on top of it because I didn't want it to look like everything else. So very early, we got into the process of building things that work for us. And then we built another company that we sold to DLJ in early 2000s. And it just kind of, again, back to that, always thinking we can do better and didn't want to look like everybody else trying to build things. So did I think I could build something better? I think that most of the industry is not good at building things. So it's the old joke about being chased by the bear. I just need to be faster than my friend, not faster than the bear. And most of the people that come out of the technology world don't understand our space. So what we were hoping to do is have a good marriage of those two things, good tech building and good knowledge of the space so we can build applications better, faster.
Love it. That's awesome. Awesome. Well, let's just kind of get into some of the sort of value and the journey there, right? So, when we think about the regular advisory relationships, you somehow find a relationship. It's a COIs or someone you meet and they come and they have a conversation. Maybe they're dissatisfied with their current advisor. Maybe they're self-directed. Maybe they're new into money. And you sort of start to have that conversation. Most of the firms in the industry don't lead with a comprehensive, lifelong established plan. They may do some asset allocation stuff. They may do some investment objective stuff, but there is sort of a bias towards let's just get the money in the door or start feeing. And then maybe we'll establish like more of an estate planning process after that. And then it's of such little importance to us as an RIA that we may even hire someone from the outside and just kind of give it to one of the two or three law firms in the area. But that's not sort of how your business has grown. It's not sort of why you built Vanilla, clearly for that. Can you kind of explain to me like some of the, in a better arc, when does that deep discovery happen? And how does that affect trust in the long-term relationship?
You unknowingly probably answered your question a little bit in the question, which is, how are people compensated? And so since the majority of the industry is compensated through AUM, what do you think people are going to focus on? How do I get more AUM? And then the second part that you also touched on is most of these firms bring in what I'll call a sideshow of, oh yeah, we have an estate planner. They're a feature. And I think it's kind of inverted. To me, the world is upside down. So if you look at, let's just start with a very wealthy family. In a very wealthy family, the biggest impact by far is estate planning. It's a 40% instant return without discounts, and that doesn't include all the additional benefits that come down the road. So massive, massive outsized returns. Lawyers get paid by the hour. So arguably they add the most value if they're proactive, and they get paid the least. Then you've got asset allocators, which is the majority of the RIA and the wealth advisory industry. And they get paid, somewhere between 50 basis points and 100 basis points, whatever it may be. And they're somewhat commoditized, but they add nominal value. But most of that, it comes in the form of service. And they get paid in the middle. So let's say that's a fair compensation for what they're doing. Then you have the asset managers, and the data says that they don't add value. They detract value, particularly when you add fees and taxes to it. And they get paid the most. They have the most scalable business. So the people that add the most value get the least amount of comp, and the people that add the least value get the most amount of comp. And so when we started Advice Period, we knew that going into clients and saying, you're worth $100 million, you have a $40 million problem. On day one, I could probably save you $15 million by doing some estate planning and discounting. And over time, here's what it's going to look like. And by the way, we think the investment stuff's a commodity for the most part. So we'll do all that, but for a much lower fee. Oh, and so we're going to focus on it. We're going to charge you a fixed fee. That's got a 3% escalator to it. So every day we have to show up adding value in a unique way. And so we turn the model on its head to charge differently, focus on different things, and add immediate demonstrable value. And that was a very good model for us. So most people just are still stuck in the AUM model.
Yeah, it's almost like they're doing it because it's what's always been done, and very few people have kind of proven outside that it's possible. I know that for some of the FPA advocacy groups, they've talked about planning as a service and sort of charging for planning. It hasn't taken off. It hasn't transformed the world. I think people are still kind of stuck in the asset gathering and then just keep moving on. Like, how does, if you were to give advice to any other advisory firm out there that would take a different step, like explain that sort of the untapped benefit of leading with or emphasizing significantly that deep estate planning process in the relationship, and how those relationships are different over time versus maybe a less planful, less comprehensive depth of understanding.
Yeah, let's break them into two camps: those with large taxable estates and those with either non-taxable or smaller taxable estates, because I think they're very different experiences. For the large taxable estate, it's the ease that I just explained, and maybe I'm oversimplifying it, but it is leading with how much impact you're going to make right away and talking about the things. And my style is to go through all the various things. So in an initial meeting, I'll go like, you can do this, 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 and this. And by the time the client leaves that first or second meeting, they're like, okay, these people know what they're talking about, and they're going to demonstrate real value, and the fee is certainly worth it because I'm going to get 10x that value on day one. For the clients that do not have taxable estates or smaller, it's much more of an overall planning process. And what I'm finding, the data is way worse than I thought it would be. Something like 90% of the people that we talk to, I don't sell insurance, but don't have the right amount of life insurance. And it's a simple calculation. I mean, you can do it in an Excel spreadsheet, you can do it on a piece of paper. But advisors, if they're not compensated for keeping track of people's life insurance, don't keep track of it because they don't care. They're not getting paid. But nothing is worse than having a non-working spouse or partner left with a child and having to figure out how to pay their bills, how to take care of their child. These are the things that really matter. And so I think for the non-taxable client, there's foundational work around having the right documents, because it's pay now or pay later. You're either paying an attorney to clean it up after you die, or you're paying a lot less now to have basic plans put in place. It's pay now or pay later on life insurance. Pay a little bit for term insurance now so you're protected, or it's a nightmare later on and you're back at work and trying to scrape things together. And so both of those change the relationship with the client because it's a holistic approach. Retirement is important, but the math is simple around it. Monte Carlo is simple. You can spend 3% if you want to be conservative, 4% if you want to be more traditional. You need to save 33 times what you want to, what you need to spend, and that's simple. And that also goes into the life insurance calculation. So I think, to shorten up the answer, it's all about changing what you care about with the client, which is the family, that they're everything that matters to them that's important, and getting out of the investment stuff, which again I think is a commodity.
I love it. For firms that haven't done it yet, that have maybe don't have an estate planning lever in their organization, or kind of leveraging external resources, what would your recommendation be for one to say, how would you start doing that? Like, do you hire attorneys in-house? Do you work with external attorneys and sort of make sure that all the data is captured and sort of managed internally within your four walls? Like, what's a good, like, if you didn't set it up this way, could it be hard to move in that direction?
I don't know if it's hard. You just have to decide which route you're going down. So one path may be, and I kind of pick on advisors and say that most advisors do no estate planning. The ones that do estate planning just refer out to people that refer them business. The ones that are one step above that maybe know who's a good attorney and who isn't. And I'd say, and at the top level, you employ really good people that used to practice and don't want to be in the hourly billing regime anymore, but still love the practice of complex estate planning, those are who I've hired. But those are very, very expensive people. And so if you're not in that last bucket, the software that's available today, not just through us, but through some of our competitors, really helps you do that. And you can still have an attorney involved if you want, but now you've kind of narrowed the scope of possibilities and helped to direct them. And what the software is doing is turning a reactive process into a proactive process. And so for advisors that really just start out and say, Doug, do you have an estate plan? Yes. Okay, check that box. Let's move on. How much do you have at Wirehouse ABC? Can I get that money? It now is, well, Doug, I'm going to load your stuff into our system and we're going to check it periodically. And by the way, the next iteration of the software, or even current today, is going to remind you to check your fiduciaries, remind you whether or not you have the right amount of insurance, remind you whether or not that you move from state A to state B and you need to update your documents, or your kid's turning 18 and going off to college, you need a HIPAA release and a healthcare proxy, things like that. So the software can be, I call it an exoskeleton for an advisor to help them focus on things they don't need to know or don't want to know, but should know. So need is actually, I should underscore need, without making them become experts. Then refer the business out, but at least know what you don't know and talk to the client about it.
Yeah, I love it. Share some of it. I know we were in the sort of lead up to this and talking about it. I think there's some really good examples of firms that have either been built around estate planning as a cornerstone to the service model, or those that have incorporated, especially using vanilla, in their organization, and sort of they've been starting to track the impact of that model on their business. Can you just kind of share with like the listeners that, like, how is this proven out in ways that I don't think it's been as public as the numbers we started to hear?
Well, we actually just Vanilla put out a case study with Mariner. So Marty Bicknell, who's a good friend of mine, we've done a lot of fintech deals together, invested in Vanilla, so they were early adopters, and I've since sold my company to Mariner. So I've seen this deployed. It's one of the biggest deployments that we've got from a vanilla client to help up. The case study, I just pulled up some of the data, looks at high use offices to no usage offices when it comes to the software. And it's very interesting. The ones that use the software more have much bigger books of business, have much faster growing businesses. And it's a linear progression. And so I think it says one of two things. Well, I would love to attribute it all to the software. It really says the advisors that take that holistic approach, the advisors that think about the estate plan with the client, tend to have a better relationship and a deeper relationship and a bigger share of wallet. And so I hope it's the software, but it ain't just the software. And so I think you started off saying a lot of firms are not aware of it. I think this is changing very, very rapidly. All of the major Wall Street firms have been talking to us and our competitors. They know that this is something that will become table stakes, very much like financial planning has. We're seeing the same thing in the advisor world, whether it's at the brokerage level or the RIA level, but they have less control. So, a lot of it comes from above. But I think it's going to move faster than the financial planning adoption did, which really has taken 20 years. So I think this is probably a 10-year run.
I want to double click into the growth for a second. So, and maybe some we may not know, and some we can hypothesize, and some we totally know. Is the growth from, or like maybe how do we think the growth is coming? Is the growth because advisors and teams that have a strong background in estate planning and they're using technology to automate that, sort of run that for an increasing number of clients, are getting more referrals in from existing clients and from sort of folks that bring them in because they had such a good experience? It was so thoughtful. It was so, foundational to the satisfaction and long-term stress relief of an investor. Or is it the wallet share accretion? Like, I'm doing this for a third of my, for my taxable, but I've got some qualified accounts over there that I haven't brought in. I'm going to bring in everything into one. And so we're seeing some of that growth through that phase. Or are they winning more relationships? They're getting more at bats because they have a more sort of differentiated, deeper relationship, and they can promote that they're going to do that with their prospects. So they're winning more, just total, blue ocean relationships. Any sense of like, and don't say all three, because that's like, I can't say all three. So like, which one do you think? No. Which one will drive it, you think?
To use a analogy, I would say it's like, people choose their investment advisors the way they choose their doctors. They ask a friend. And, if you just need a new primary care physician, all you really care about is the bedside manner. Because, by the way, your friends have no clue whether your doctor's a good doctor or not. They just like their experience. Mm-hmm. If you find out you have cancer, you're going to do some research. And if you find out you've got really bad cancer, you're going to do a lot of research. And your experience is much, much deeper in that process. And so when you talk about your doctor to somebody who's going through something similar, you have a much deeper sense of that relationship and what you got out of that relationship. And I think it's the same with the advisors that are doing deep estate planning, because they're saying like, hey, you got to talk to my guy before you sell your company, or you got to talk to my guy because you haven't done these things. And I can't tell you how often I hear from someone like, I was on a golf course and my buddy asked me if I used my exemption, and I had no idea what that was. And the guy's worth, hundreds of millions of dollars because their advisor never spoke to him about it. So since I can't pick all three, I'll take the last one and say they have deeper, more meaningful relationships. Even my experience has been that now the kids are involved because the parents ask me to explain the plan to the kids. And so now the kids come on board. And as part of our fixed fee, we don't care about the AUM. So we don't mind having the relationships. We want to have those discussions with the kids, and that deepens that relationship too. And we all know there's going to be a lot of money in motion in the next 20 years.
The Gen 2 and futures of beneficiaries of the wealth side of this, I think that's the part that when we started talking about estate planning and its role in organic growth and just trying to get more into the whys and kind of led to this conversation, I think that's what made the most sense to me, that in a normal advisory relationship, there isn't a not a care, but there's no like data that's being collected about where is the money going to go in the estate, or even if you do have an estate planning process that's outside your four walls, the law firm that you got referred to knows about the kids, but they never came back to the advisory firm to do any curation, micro advice, little moments of building a relationship, but also building up acumen and understanding and like appreciation for the wealth at all 20 years before there was any kind of transition. Bringing that data up and into that experience, I think makes tremendous, assuming you take action on it, which we not every firm we work with takes action on all the data that they've got available to them. If you don't have it available, you have that ability to build those relationships lightly over a long period of time and get those sort of future investors into the four walls and maintain it. I think that has to be a huge long-term, almost unfortunately, almost a glacial pace of change that this is going to happen, but it has to be a benefit to having this information inside the four walls. Let's kind of move a little bit further, like some of the other psychological barriers that you can think of for even a financial planning firm that does not want to get into estate planning. Could there be barriers to someone as an advisor? I hope the answer is no, but they would say like, no, my clients aren't complicated enough, not complex enough to actually need estate plans. I'm only really banking the millionaire next door sort of $750 million to $2.5 million clients. I'm not going after the $50 million complex. Is there a model here where there would be a plausible reason for them not to have an estate planning process as part of their practice?
Well, back to my earlier bifurcation of the clientele, every single client, in fact, I'd argue it's more important. So if you've got 50, 100 plus $1 million and you haven't planned well, you can fix that with money. But if you have $2 or $3 million and you haven't planned well, you've created a mess for the people that are left behind. And, again, whether it's not enough liquidity, or it's going through probate, or it's tying up assets, or whatever it is, I'd argue it's more important and has a bigger impact for those people. So the thing that gets in the way is, and since you're in the tech business, you see this, the advisors are usually more resistant to change than the clients. So back to when we started Advice Period, which was 12 years ago, one of my partners, who shall remain unnamed, it's like, I said, we're going all digital. Like, no. My clients want PDFs. They actually want paper reports. I'm like, no, they don't. Mm-hmm. You want paper reports. Mm-hmm. My dad, my oldest clients, they all have iPads. They all have iPhones. They don't need all the paper. You're afraid of doing it. And I see it today, even with the vanilla software, where I want a PDF. I want to be able to control the environment. I want to control what the clients see. So the same thing is true of not adopting to having financial planning or estate planning. Is they're afraid. And so advisors don't like to go into areas where they can't control the environment. They don't know more than the client, and they don't want to look stupid. So if they're insecure about it, they just ignore it until they don't have a choice. And what's going to happen is they're going to get passed. It's just like AI. You're not going to get replaced by AI. You're going to get replaced by somebody who's using AI. Yeah. So you better start figuring it out soon.
Yeah, I love that. I love that analogy. And I see that too. My common, for 20 something odd years in this industry, advisors, they don't like change. They don't hate change. They don't like coercion. So it's like when you're asking them to do something, they don't fundamentally like believe they're valued in, like the digital experience. Like if I give away paper, part of my value proposition, I get to hand someone a book, and it's like this moment or this experience. Like somehow in my mind, I've convinced myself that a quarter of my value is sitting in front of someone with paper, right? Because it feels good in that moment. And so your digitization is like I'm being coerced not to deliver that value. It's psychological. It's amazing to watch. That's awesome. I think the correlation to financial planning, I think, is a really good one, right? This estate planning really being, especially with technology now coming to really put things on rails and make it far, far easier to go through that process, have a good outcome, and then have it keep living and breathing and not creates like an anchor of documentation spread around different places. But it's correlation to the financial planning sort of boon, where very few wealth management firms today don't offer some basic financial planning as sort of the entry point or a critical moment in that client experience. That estate planning is like the next leap forward. Other parallels, you see that happening in like the next like 10 years or so, that estate planning, especially technology-led estate planning, is going to be, as ubiquitous as financial planning.
You mean a corollary that's different than estate planning? I mean, I think AI adoption is going to be that. So we've been saying that the next frontier is estate planning,
Mhm.
and arguably it could be the last frontier because a lot has been done. But how all these things are deployed, AI is both exhilarating and scary as can be. And I don't mean scary as in it's going to take over the world. I mean scary like I'm pretty into it, and I have a hard time keeping up with everything.
Yeah.
And so if you're not in it all day, every day, you're going to be left behind. If you don't even know what the term agentive means, you're already way behind. And most people have absolutely no clue. I just got back from I have an industry YPO forum retreat, and none of my forum mates, half of them aren't using it, and half of them have no idea what agentive is. And we spent half a day talking about it, and you got to be up to speed. I mean, for F2, huge opportunity to get people using AI and also getting them past the fear factor. Like, there's no PII that we put into AI. So I don't know what everyone's worried about their stuff being training data, but the fear that goes on in our industry is crazy.
Yeah.
About
It's like estate planning. It's which thread do I pull first? And am I going to spend a whole bunch of time pulling the wrong thread? That's where we see people that don't make decisions. Those that are using AI right now are using it in like high value, low risk moments. We did a whole research project, and the amount of time saved per producing advisor on a weekly basis using some of the basic note taking it's like half a day a week. I've never seen anything that was that impactful that quick. And then the haves and the have-nots. This is actually kind of what I think the estate planning. It's not its predominant benefit, but like it has a disproportionate benefit to the firms that already have it. Like the automation of the estate planning process is a disproportionate benefit to those that are already deeply involved in the estate planning process, which is our regional bank trust clients that are sort of the entire foundation is the trust and the estate documentation. There's a lot of content there. There's a lot of opportunity to cross sell and deepen the relationships, and very few of them doing it. It's the same problem with AI, that of the bank trusts that are looking at taking our surveys and kind of engaging with us on a research basis, a very small percentage of any AI projects at all versus our fast growing, smart, future forward PE backed RIAs. It's like off the charts. Like 75% have an AI project or two in place already. And so I think it's like that idea of like you're going to get lapped. I think there are some organizations in this world that are going to get lapped, and hopefully this recording helps some people kind of wake up to the fact that estate planning, if you're already doing it with your clients and you're using a little bit more technology or better technology, you can actually start to be a little more competitive. Talking about like let's just kind of look forward a little bit, next 5 years. So like 5-year outlook for estate planning and growth and AI and using this data. Like, what do you help me out with like next 5 years? We're sitting here in 2030. Like, what are we going to see?
Before I answer that, you just reminded me of I usually use a leg day analogy that everyone hates leg day. But if you want a well-balanced build, you need to do leg day. You need to train everything. And it's the same is true of wealth advisory. You have to work on the muscles you don't like working on. Dieting, you don't diet for 2 days and all of a sudden you look great. You don't do leg day for 2 days. Takes years to get into the kind of physique, let's say, that you want, or health or whatever. Estate planning is the exact same thing, which we'll get into your last question. This is something you have to start now. My team fought. We obviously started vanilla early, and it's a pain in the neck. Getting the stuff in here is too much work, and it was more cumbersome in the beginning. It's getting easier and easier every day. You have to start now so that you have the data, so you have the baseline, so that as this new tech comes out and these new features, you can capitalize on them. Otherwise, you're stuck starting at ground zero, which is still going to take you a couple of years to get caught up. 3 years from now, and somebody's going to pass you. So where do I think it's going? It's a loaded question, because I do think people say advisors will never get replaced, and I actually don't know if I believe that's true. Today, what we're seeing with AI and the ability to have a real human experience. I mean, if you haven't spoken to ChatGPT, which I do all the time for lots
Hmm.
of things, including I live in Mexico half the time, and my Spanish isn't as good as it could be.
Hmm.
It knows slang. I mean, I'm talking to somebody in Spanish who's talking to me in Spanish, and the translator is ChatGPT, and it nails it, and it sounds like
Hmm.
a human, and it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
And so I see the future being what technology should be, which is always on, knowing more, not emotional, being able to interpret emotion, understanding the customer, just like we're seeing with AI now. We're still in early
Hmm.
days of AI, and knowing that Doug wants a more detailed answer because it's seen all of your history, how you interact with the software, and that you
Hmm.
are a detailed person. Whereas Steve wants a summary review, like give me 3 bullet points and get out of my face. So I think the future is it's proactively telling you what to do. It's proactively telling you you have issues. It's proactively telling you you need to update your documents because you moved from this place to that place. It's telling you your kid's going to be 18 in 6 months. You need to take care of this and that. It's identifying that your GRAT strategy, the stock in there, has dropped by 15%. You should re-GRAT the asset. So
Yeah.
everything that we do can be done by a computer better, faster. And that's where I think things are going. And I think it's, again, because of AI, it's going to move way, way faster than people expect.
Yeah. Awesome. I could not agree more. Like, we've been leaning into technology around AI for about a year now with our clients, and like when the lights start turning on, it's amazing. I think some of our clients are mid-size, or like in the billion to $15 billion range, and they're the not the lack of adoption. There's sometimes a struggle of, well, I can't do an extra project. I have to do this AI project in lieu of another project, and that ends up becoming a bit of a barrier. Like, do I do the CRM project or the AI project, or the new UMA strategy, or do I do new reporting platform or AI? And so, but everybody's thinking about it, and the RIAs are by far taking far more action on it than the banks that we work with.
Yeah, well,
Um,
like Bitcoin. By the way, I'm not a huge crypto advocate at all, but everybody knows the buzzwords and to talk about it. But how many are
yep,
really deploying it and truly understand the underpinnings of
yeah,
it? That's, I think, the problem in the industry is they can talk the talk, they just aren't prepared or
yeah,
willing to walk the walk.
yeah. Let's talk, if you don't mind, just kind of give me an update on like the brain, right? So like the new sort of insight resource that you guys have, and kind of some of the why, and some of the like how this fits into this equation, and what people are starting to see out of this.
At the risk of oversimplifying, I used to always say the perfect job for me is I would just like to sit at my desk and have people parade estate plans in front of me. Here's their current balance sheet, and here's
Hmm.
what their current documents say. I don't need to read the actual documents. Technology will do it for me. And from there, I can say, oh, well, you should do this, this, and this. And so if you're good at something, back to analogies, what's the difference between a good running back and a great running back? Well, a great running back sees the hole and
Hmm.
everything slows down for that person and they can run through everybody, whereas a good running
Hmm.
back is going to get tackled. I think a great estate planner sees things in 3 or 4D and can basically say, you do this, this, and this, and here's exactly what the recipe is based on your circumstances, which are all unique, but not unique. And so the brain is just a version of that. It's my brain and a lot of other people smarter than me, their brain in the software proactively looking at the data and telling the advisor what to do. And one of the things I feel very strongly about is not just telling the advisor, but telling the client. So let's give the advisor the chance to be smart and be proactive. But if they don't take action, the software should tell the client and force the advisor to be better. Like,
Yeah.
hey, I just got a notification from, again, it's gray labeled. So from you, Mr. or Ms. Advisor, that said I need to do this. Well, if the advisor is caught with their pants down, they're going to be like, I don't know. But if they are otherwise getting a call, they're going to be forced. And then they're going to see the benefits of it, which is I'm having a different relationship with my client. I'm
Hmm.
having a different discussion. I brought their kids in. We were talking about next gen. I have so many great examples where we have taken very wealthy clients and said, let's give some money out of the trust to your kids that's not generation skipping, and have them set up generation skipping trusts for themselves so we can get more. Now I'm talking to the adult kids that aren't wealthy yet, but they're starting to understand my parents are wealthy. I should do some planning. Here's what it looks like. And now we have relationships with those people. So these are the kinds of things that the brain will do, is say, Doug, you have a big estate. Unfortunately, a lot of it's in non-exempt trusts instead of exempt trusts, but your kids are adults. Why don't we use their exemption before it sunsets? Here's how to do it.
Yeah.
And provide the education. So I use the term exoskeleton. It's an exoskeleton. It's a lawyer in a box, and I call it whatever you want, but it's basically letting you do more with less.
It also gives an advisor opportunities to have multiple quality contact touch points along the relationship. Every time we analyze the correlation of NPS, referability, and growth, and all the other measures within an organization, and top correlated connection between growth, NPS, or actual true referability is just how often did you connect with that person? Like the quality and the cadence of connection, incredibly positively correlated to outcomes versus not a lot of connection. And even if you had an outperformance, underperformance, or you were in the wrong allocation, you underperformed your group, if you communicated more with those clients that you underperformed, they still have a higher NPS than a lower NPS. So just the more quality contact touch points falls right into that. This falls right into that. I love that. Awesome. I super appreciate you spending time. And this conversation led from more of a academic question, like, yeah, organic, we have so much data in the estate planning process. Like, why aren't we using this more? Why don't I see more people doing this? And I super appreciate you just joining in the conversation, Steve. I think it's been fantastic. Like, any final words or thoughts, things that I didn't kind of ask about, we didn't cover, you'd love to make sure we cover off on?
Yeah, well, you triggered something in your last comment. With the NPS scores, those meaningful conversations. So my dad used to joke, I'll pay extra to not have these meetings, because talking about outperformance and underperformance and throwing a bunch of numbers at people is exhausting. And even if it's interesting to someone, you're not going to do anything about it. And even if you do something about it, changing lanes, firing this manager and hiring that manager has negligible impact over time. But if you talk to someone about their relationship with money and what they want for their kids and their values, and I love, my favorite question to ask people is, well, particularly ones of significant wealth, Doug, how many kids do you have? I've got 3. I assume your plan says you're just going to divide it up a third, a third, a third. It's like, well, yeah, that's what's fair, right? I'm like, well, let's say one of your kids has 10 grandchildren and one has 1 grandchild and one has 0. Do you care that one grandchild has 10 times as much as the other 10 grandchildren? Well, I never thought about that. No one asked me that question. All of a sudden, you're having meaningful conversations about the things that matter and how to memorialize their values. And it's a much more engaging conversation. It's also easy, and it builds a relationship. So you want your NPS score to go up. The reason I get referrals is I'm the doctor that knows enough, but spends a couple hours with the patient talking about how they feel instead of just going over the lab results with them. And that's where I think the opportunity lies for these people.
That's awesome. Totally agree. Awesome. Where can we learn more about vanilla? People that are listening to this or watching this, like where should they go to learn more about this?
www.justvanilla.com, but get a demo, man. There's a lot going on in the software, and make sure you understand it and run some people through it.
Awesome. Well, I super appreciate it. Thanks for joining, Steve. Really just love having, a relationship with you since we started F2, and just really appreciate you leaning in and sharing with our folks.
Thanks for having me on board.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Have a good day.